Here we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Thanks for tuning into another edition of another Dolphins podcast in what might be the most impressive Friday news dump of early May. Joshua Houtz, did the Miami Dolphins get the secret weapon of their offense by signing Odell Beckham Jr. over the weekend?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the secret weapon, Jake, but this is something that I think us as Dolphin fans, as any fans in football, have probably wanted at one point or another, right? Odell Beckham Jr. on your favorite team. So we knew it might come at some point. We saw, we're going to talk about some of these rookies. We have already talked about some of these rookies that we got hyped about in the wide receiver room, but we just added Odell Beckham Jr. So I don't know if it's a secret weapon, but the Dolphins had interest. He had interest in the Dolphins, so I'm here for it. I'm here to see how this whole thing works out because that's a hell of a number wide receiver 3, Jake, right? That's a hell of a wide receiver 3.
The Dolphins are doing everything they can to try to convince their fans everywhere that we don't know ball. This is literally, Josh, 12 hours after we posted a podcast where at the end I kind of went through some names, the Dolphins only having, $4 million in cap space until June 1st. I was like, are they going to sign Dalton Risner? You and Kat no, we were kind of happy with where the guard spot was. And then we actually talked about Odell Beckham, and that was one we all kind of felt too the Dolphins weren't going to do, but I'm going to be completely honest. I'm ready to go full-blown homer, Josh. It's May 5th. I don't think there's a single wide receiver who's been photoshopped more in his career other than Odell Beckham. And my first thought is exactly what Tyreek Hill said on Twitter. I saw you retweet this. As long as he doesn't get on a boat anywhere, man, I think we're going to be in good shape here.
Yeah, and I'm trying everything I can, Jake, not to just completely steal. Remember when the Philadelphia Eagles signed Saquon Barkley and you showed me that Pokemon thing and it was the evolution tree? I'm trying so hard not to post Trent Sherfield evolute, turning into Cedric Wilson, then turning into Odell Beckham Jr. because I think it'd be absolutely perfect. So I've been thinking about that ever since you showed me it. I don't want to be the guy that copies it, but now that I said I do. But man, I mean, yeah, I'm here for it, right? I mean, it's a pretty low risk, high reward situation when you think about what Odell Beckham brings to this offense. I mean, we'll talk about this guy is obviously not the same as he once was, but you still see some of those traits. You still see him having some of that, ability to break away and change a game with, his, whether it's him going up and high pointing a football or just outrunning a defensive back, as we'll still see. So, yeah, man, I'm here for it. I'm here for Odell Beckham Jr. in Dolphins uniform. What could possibly go wrong? But I'm sure something out there could definitely go wrong.
Famous last words. What could go wrong here? I don't at first I was kind of concerned, oh no, what if he has a couple rough weeks? What if he's not targeted enough? In 2023, he was on the Baltimore Ravens. No team had a more warped pass-to-run ratio than the Baltimore Ravens. They ran the football 53% of the time. So that got me thinking right away, man, if he was in an offense that barely threw the football, and I think we didn't hear him acting up while he was in Baltimore. Everybody in there with the Ravens absolutely loved having him around. So that first concern I had of him, oh no, being the Odell Beckham, the big diva that was in Cleveland or with the Giants, I don't think he's that guy, and I don't think he's been that way for the last 3-4 years dating back to when he was with the Rams.
Yeah, and I think that's a stigma that probably follows him ever since he was younger, right? I mean, we know how these receivers are. We see the tweets, jokingly saying, a quarterback tweets this, a receiver tweets this, and it's just, the most random things. And he was that player at one point, but it does seem like he's matured a little bit. He's been part of a Super Bowl winning team, right, with Jalen Ramsey and the Rams. I did, going through it, I guess we just kind of overlooked Odell Beckham in 2022. I guess I didn't realize that he, did not play at all that season. But just the fact that he's put over 500 plus yards in his last 2 years when he has played. You mentioned him already being in that run first oriented type offense. I do think that him and Mike McDaniel had those discussions. We talked about, or we've heard how they had this relationship that, they continue to discuss things behind the scenes. So who knows what Mike McDaniel's promised him in this offense, but it's just funny how we're sitting here talking about who's going to step up all off season long and be that slot guy and, come in and take on some of that workload. And it seems like it's inevitable that's Odell Beckham, but we can't overlook the Jonnu Smiths and some of these other wide receivers that we're going to continue to get hyped about, right? We're going to continue to get hyped about them, but adding this type of player, man, I mean, we didn't see it coming, but if they have the money, why not, right? Empty the chamber in this win now mode.
That's such a great point because the first negative is, what if he's this locker room cancer, yada, yada, yada. Well, we're kind of seeing that that's not the case. Number two is I don't know if it was Sport Trek that put this number in my head or what, but I was kind of under the impression that needing to sign Odell Beckham, it was going to be about a $10 million contract. I don't know why that was what I was thinking, but that's where I kind of thought. And I was like, that's more that said was getting paid. So it's kind of, it's a big contract. Josh, Odell Beckham Jr. signed a deal worth $3 million with the Miami Dolphins, a deal that can reach 8.2 or so million dollars once incentives kick in. But this is a deal the Dolphins were able to make before June 1st, before the Dolphins got the money from the Xavier Howard post June 1st cut. That to me is the most impressive thing, man. This is a contract that the Dolphins were able to kind of metaphorically sweep under the rug. It's not even something like Shaq Barrett where there's 4 void years. This is like 1 year he's coming in. Sounds like he wants to prove it. That seems like a pretty sweet deal, just considering that, we had all these concerns about how much he'd cost being a locker room tough guy. This is peanuts. Cedric Wilson got paid double this, if not more.
Yeah, and I wish I remembered off the top of my head how much we paid Teddy Bridgewater that 1 year. Wasn't it like
I think it was 5 mil.
It was
Oh, it might
absolutely
have been 10
ridiculous.
mil. Oh my God.
I think I was like 10. Yeah. So, I mean, it is crazy. I had to look it up because I do remember when he signed with the Baltimore Ravens, everyone's like, okay, we want Odell Beckham, but not for what? Up to 18 million. And we're sitting here talking about how we could have him for up to 8 million. And I mean, if he hits those parameters, right, he must have a pretty awesome season, whether it's
Dolphins Super
5
Bowl,
touchdowns.
probably.
Yeah. I hope that'd be so amazing. And we already see him tweeting, right? I think Jalen Ramsey tweeted out a picture, remember last time we were together, Brody, or something like that. So
Yep.
Hype's at an all-time high. I know we're all excited to see what he can do. And yeah, man, this is a guy who, again, it's not the same Odell Beckham that we remember from, 5, 10. Yeah, how long has he been in the NFL? It seems like he's been around forever. And he's only 31. Yeah, he's 31 years old. So he still can make plays. I mean, this guy was the Baltimore Ravens saving grace a season ago, right?
Yep.
Wasn't this the guy they were hyping up as that thing that's going to push him over the top? So we'll see, man. Excited to see him get out there and start working with Tua Tagovailoa. But I did post a hype video with him and Jarvis Landry, and it's a little painful, that everyone wanted Landry, but this has to be. We talk about evolution all the time, Jake. Odell Beckham has to be that next tier of a Landry, right? He has that dog in him, but he's still that quote unquote wide receiver 1 type build.
I got to ask you, Josh, is Miami finally becoming a destination? Do players prefer to come to Miami? ESPN's Jeremy Fowler came out and said Miami has talked to Beckham for weeks trying to secure this deal. Incentive package helped get it over the top. I was told OBJ was intrigued by the chance to produce with Mike McDaniel. He believes that head coach will get him the ball. Josh, before I finish this quote, I want to start right there. Hearing Fowler hype up this situation between Odell Beckham and Mike McDaniel is one thing. We know that Mike McDaniel is a great players coach. He really connects with his players. He believes that head coach Mike McDaniel will get him the ball. Hearing that's pretty impressive when you consider that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are combining for 18 targets or so per game. So shake that crystal ball. What does that look like? What do you think Mike McDaniel promised to Beckham to make him think, we're going to make sure, despite having these 2 big guys, you're going to be just there as just involved?
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine because we're sitting here talking about how, we've upgraded the running back unit this, offseason. We've talked about Jonnu Smith needing to get more touches. So I don't know what he promised him, but the fact that he came here, with that in his mind, considering what Buffalo has to throw to, right? Josh Allen, and the Chiefs, they've upgraded their unit a little bit, but you could think Odell Beckham might be able to go there and maybe be a little bit more featured in those offenses. So he must have loved this role. We always talk about state taxes and how that's a huge thing with Miami, but again, he made $18 million last season. I don't think that state taxes dropped him down to up to $8 million salary. So I don't know what that means, man, but I mean, and we're going to talk about it, right? What does that mean for the guys behind Odell Beckham? Because there were some guys that the Dolphins re-signed that it looked like could at least maybe step into that wide receiver 3 role or even have a role in this offense. But with a guy like Odell Beckham, you're probably not going to see the field no matter how well you play or perform throughout camp.
Fowler just got more interesting from there. Beckham still has a lot to prove, and talking to people around the league, if he embraces being an inside receiver, aka slot receiver, he could make a killing in this offense. Fowler added that Beckham thought Kansas City was appealing, Buffalo as well, but Miami was persistent in trying to convince him to join the team. That, to me, there is so interesting. If there's maybe some people you never know what people around the league means. That could mean it's not custodians, but it legitimately could mean custodians. But I'm curious if that is something where maybe it was broken out that Mike McDaniel did convince someone like Beckham that he could be used more in the slot, which is interesting because we've spent months saying that, hey, we'd love to see both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle be lined up in the slot more.
Yeah, and it just allows them to do different things, and it allows Mike McDaniel to be that genius to go out there and you know figure this whole thing out, man. I mean, we love the way the offense looked, and shame, man. We always go back to the Pokemon thing, but the way it's evolved since first year Mike McDaniel, now how it's evolving. You did ask Jake the question, is this becoming a destination? And I think it absolutely is, right? Whether it's the weather, we've always heard that. We've always heard the Dolphins linked to every free agent, but now it actually seems like these players, these draft picks want to go to Miami, want to learn from this coaching staff and want to be part of what they're building. And we see the different surveys that go around, the Dolphins and their staff and, the facilities and things like that. And they're always at the top of it. And we know how big of a, advocate some of these players are for a guy like Mike McDaniel. So I absolutely think that things are changing, times are changing, and the fact that Mike McDaniel and Odell Beckham, had this buddy to buddy type relationship where they continue to talk, and he was probably sweet talking to him every single day. I think even players reached out to him. So this was something that it seemed inevitable, seemed like a match made in heaven, and we'll see how this offense again evolves now that we have an Odell Beckham Jr. Because we said it, I think, a long time ago, Jake. This dude's just literally building an ultimate team, a Madden ultimate team, and whether it works or not, I mean, we're all along for that ride.
Josina Anderson tweeted out, throughout the process, Dolphin players continued to reach out to OBJ to let him know that he was wanted in Miami. I don't know what's happened to football media, but this is a direct quote from Josina Anderson. OBJ harvested a good kinship with Mike McDaniel during his initial visit. I don't know what made her go that way with the dialogue, but all the power to her. OBJ was excited about discussions over the Dolphins offense and coach's analysis of his skill set. He worked tremendously hard to come back from his injury. He has something in store for Dolphin fans soon with this news. Sounds very dramatic. It is early May, and I don't want to really, go over the top, but Josh, I think this does speak to that final point of Miami seems like a destination. You have players kind of pitching it to each other. You have a coach who can kind of walk into a room and instantly take the air out of it. He chose this Miami Dolphins team over Patrick Mahomes and over what Andy Reid could have pitched about an offense. That, to me, man, speaks volumes.
Yeah, and you can't sit here and say it's money either, because you have to imagine if you're even talking to Odell Beckham, you're in the race with that. And Jake asked why she probably used that dialogue. I mean, the only thing I could think of is just to stand out, right? Everyone's sitting here reporting things. I mean, you're saying that, and I'm picturing. I mean,
with the lovely Dolphins.
Like, damn, that's some Shakespeare stuff. I mean, whatever it takes. I mean, but you're right. It's the all season, so I mean, that's going to be something that till we're going to be old, man. I'm already kind of old, but I'm going to be old. I'm going to remember. I'm going to hear the word kingship and be like, yo, remember that time Josina Anderson brought up Odell Beckham Jr., and then it's just going to go down this whole tailspin. So, yeah, that's pretty neat.
You look up kinship in the dictionary, it's just Mike McDaniel hugging Odell Beckham Jr. like he was Aaron Donald that one time. It's just Mike McDaniel hugging everyone. He's just got those lovely Dolphins and their kinship with their players. And Josh, the thing is, it's so great. It's so exciting to hear that players want to come to Miami, but I already know what the YouTube comments are going to be saying. None of this matters unless they win a playoff game. So I'm very curious to see how this really takes that offense in the next direction, because we did spend months saying, like, just throw resources at the offensive line. Hey, this is an offense that targets number 3 wide receivers rarely ever. It was Cedric Wilson. This was an offense that rarely ever targeted tight ends. Now they have Jonnu Smith. What's happening to this offense? What is this unit going to exactly look like? Because you have 3 guys all of a sudden, if we want to kind of lean into Fowler's report, that are going to line up as a slot receiver. Do you feel that the Dolphins are really overcoming those late season issues we just saw just derail the season?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because it all comes down. I mean, last year anyway, a lot of it came down to the injuries, and it just all kind of fell off. So I mean, I think we were setting ourselves up to maybe. I can't sit here and say that we have now gotten to the level where we can get over that hump. I do love the way this offense is starting to look. I love that we got Jonnu Smith. I mean, a lot of people post how this offense looks and the different speed demons they have, and they leave out a guy like Jonnu Smith. I mean, and we'll talk about some of these other. Yeah, which is bananas, but maybe we're also overhyping him. I mean, that's one thing I do want to say about this Odell Beckham. we're all super stoked, but it is like that part of the offseason. We're just going to get stoked over any signing, right? This could have been DJ Chark, and we'd be on here, just absolutely gushing over what it could mean. So I do understand that we're at that point, but dude, a wide receiver 3, Odell Beckham. Like, sign me up for that. But I don't know how this offense is going to evolve. And then you want to keep running the football late in the year, and you promised Odell Beckham he's going to get this amount of targets, and Tyreek and Jalen want theirs. So, damn, dude. And then in the comments, they're even going to tell us that Tua doesn't even look past his first read or something like that. So it doesn't even matter who the wide receiver 3 is, right?
Let me bend your knee, Josh. Let me get you hyped up for this signing. The same morning the Dolphins signed Odell Beckham Jr., the Bills were ready, Josh. The Bills counter. They said, you know what? You guys take Odell Beckham Jr. because we're going to sign Chase Claypool. How about them apples? Don't you wish they did that instead, Josh?
I mean, that's a perfect that's just sums up this podcast pretty much, right? Last year I was probably on here, we were talking about Chase Claypool when he getting hyped up for his, like, I know he broke a tackle once and got like an 8-yard gain or something. So I'm sure I was there hyping it up. So yeah, it's hilarious, right? That this news came right after that, because they must have known that Odell Beckham was off the market, and then that was their who they turned to, Chase Claypool. So good luck. That's all I can say.
And at the same time, the Chargers, I think it was the night before Beckham was announced. You wonder if they're another team that wanted to pursue Beckham because they announced DJ Chark on a up to $5 million deal. I think the Dolphins went out. I know it's May. I know we don't want to get too hyped, Josh, but let's go into some of these stats here. Let's talk about what Odell Beckham does and what he brings to the team. In 2023, he lined up wide 451 snaps in the slot just 68 times last year. Mike McDaniel could have promised, I think, 150, 180 slot snaps, and that could have been a difference maker. Because going back to 2021, when he was with the genius Sean McVay, he played, it was either 8 or 9 games with the Rams. He played 726 snaps out wide, 135 in the slot, 1 in the backfield. But he really picked it up for the Rams. He was a really dynamic piece throughout the playoffs. He had a touchdown against the Cardinals in the wild card game. He had 9 receptions for 113 yards against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. He tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, but that wasn't until, I think at the time he was kind of in the running to be Super Bowl MVP. He caught a touchdown. So this is someone who, despite not showing up week after week, that's not what the Dolphins need. And what I'm hyped about is that this is the ideal changeup. Late in the season, we see that Tyreek Hill's banged up. Jalen Waddle's banged up. Odell Beckham looks like the player who can absolutely take over. I think that when we discuss wide receiver 3, we think about how they're going to line up on the field. But I actually think the way Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be used is going to be more just Waddle plays 60% of snaps. Tyreek Hill plays 78. There's a lot of overlap there where you can stagger snaps where he's your third wide receiver, but he's your first and second option and really could take over a couple games, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, because then he also adds to the longevity of Tyreek Hill. Maybe he stays healthier an extra game. Maybe he reaches that 2,000. I mean, I don't know how you're hitting 2,000 yards with Odell Beckham out there, but you're right, man. It's more than just him being on the field with these guys. It's also what he does, giving those guys time. And now we're sitting here, we joked about Mike McDaniel doing the fade, throwing the fade down the goal line.
Oh my God,
now you got Odell Beckham. Yeah, now you got Odell Beckham. So that's probably what he promised him, right? He's like, remember on Hard Knocks when I said I'm a dumbass and I just run back this fade every week? I want you to run that. But whatever it is, man, I mean, I don't see how fans could be upset with this. The only thing you could have been upset when the Dolphins were even, mentioned in the Odell Beckham sweepstakes was if he was going to make anywhere close to what he did last season. And he's not doing that. Again, I just wish that we were flies on the wall, right? And we just knew what Mike McDaniel promised him. Because you mentioned that backfield snap, and even before we came on here, I was wondering, do you think he gets involved in that way a little bit, and those are touches he gets? I mean, who knows? Who knows what Odell Beckham wants? Who knows what Mike McDaniel has in his mind? Because he's a mad genius who's always evolving this offense, and it's going to have a different wrinkle. It's going to have a different look, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
I want you to choose your own adventure, Josh, because Travis Wingfield worked for the Miami Dolphins. He kind of just spelled it all out for us. Let me know which one of your groups you'd prefer here. You could go in 11 personnel with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham Jr., Jonnu Smith, and then you could have, I don't know, Raheem Mostert, who led the league in rushing touchdowns, Devon Achane, who averaged 8 yards per carry last year. Or you could go 21 personnel. You pull out OBJ, you flip in Alec Ingold, arguably the league's best fullback coming off a Pro Bowl season. 22 personnel, you got Tyreek Hill, Jonnu Smith, get Durham Smythe involved, and then something that I think I want to do a little project on moving forward. The Dolphins do love to have 2 running backs on the field at the same time, so that's one way to get 2 involved. And then you could go down to 10 personnel with Tyreek, Waddle, OBJ, maybe a Turbo Taj, maybe a Malik Washington, and then Devon Achane out there, man. That's a NASCAR race.
Yeah, and you didn't even say Jalen Wright either. I mean, the Dolphins
Not
have so many
once.
damn pieces, man. So I can't imagine. I can't imagine being Mike McDaniel having that up your sleeve. But I mean, the whole point is you need to win the AFC East, right? You have to win a playoff game. You
Yep.
mentioned it, Jake. All this it cannot be for naught. So I think the Dolphins understand. I think they're empty in the chamber, and to hear those different packages, to hear it spelled out in front of you. I mean, I'd be a defense coordinator lying awake every night just trying to figure out how to stop this, to just try to figure out how to get one step ahead because, dude, this offense is special, and I don't know that Dolphin fans are going to realize it until, many years down the road when we're, knocked back down a peg to the realization of what a normal offense looks like.
I think there are going to be games where Odell's featured. I think there are going to be some games where Jonnu Smith is going to be featured. I still want to see some games where Devon Achane gets, 10 targets and is a real featured part of the passing attack. But Josh, when the regular season comes to an end, I think the 1-2 punch, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle atop of Miami's offense in terms of targets, receptions. We could get a little saucy and say maybe this is the year Jalen Waddle steps up and becomes that number 1. But just the way or how much money Tyreek Hill's making, wondering how much he still has in the tank, it's hard to say that he's not going to be the number 1 option this year, and I got no issues with that. But when we look at the chart at the end of the year, who's going to be third on the Miami Dolphins in targets and receptions, do you feel?
I mean, before this signing, I probably would have said Jonnu Smith. I think that's kind of the horse I backed. I think that's that element that this offense is yet to see. And I think, again, he brings some of that playmaking ability, the speed, the ability to break plays that we haven't seen. But I feel like I have to go the cliche route now, right? We're sitting here talking about how Mike McDaniel, promised Odell Beckham this amount of targets. We know he's going to be that wide receiver 3 option filled in at certain spots. So I think just based off of who Odell Beckham is, what he can bring to this offense, even at his state right now, I have to go with that. But I really want to see Jonnu Smith get involved. And that's no shade at Durham Smythe either, right? I mean, we see him starting to get better in the passing game and do some things that, you feel like he can elevate his game as well. So I think I'll go with Odell Beckham, but I would love to say Jonnu Smith or even a Devon Achane, man. We've been talking about getting him involved in the passing game. That'd be amazing. Who do you got, Jake? Who's your number 3? Who's your number 3 guy?
That's so tough. So last year, Beckham had 35 receptions for 565, 3 touchdowns. 16 yards per reception was 8th in the NFL, and over the final 6 games, he had 3 receptions or more in 3 of them, so half of those. I think Beckham can win people a lot of money this year, man. I think he's going to have 2-3 games where he goes absolutely off and is that guy. He gets, 8-9 targets, 16 yards per reception, maybe a touchdown or 2. But consistently, I think Jonnu Smith's going to be able to offer this offense something, to be able to move the chains maybe underneath, to be that red zone guy. You can't target everyone. I mean, I've been praying for years that the Dolphins can just have that tight end who's just always all alone in the end zone, where it's just schemed up in such a way where Mike McDaniel, the effort isn't even there. I think we saw it with running backs sometimes where just the way guys were in motion, then you'd have Raheem Mostert or Achane, whoever maybe just leak out of the backfield and be wide open. I think OBJ is going to have monster games, but I think Jonnu Smith, man, I'm so excited to see 5-6 targets a game just going his way, going to the tight end position. Someone who is an absolute speed demon once he gets the ball out of his hands. That's not something you can say a lot about tight ends. And I'll say there is some bias because he's on my fantasy team. And I think this is the year after 3 years of, or at least 2 years of getting blue in the face of this Dolphins offense doesn't target tight ends. It'd be a real, step in a different direction to kind of give opposing defenses a different look.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for that. I do continue to think it's going to be Jonnu Smith, but again, you just don't know what type of role that Mike McDaniel has promised to a guy like Odell Beckham. So we're here for it. This is the most hype we could be on May 5th, right? I mean, Cinco de Mayo, man. We're sitting here talking about Odell Beckham just signed with the Dolphins
in 2024. 10 years after he was a first-round draft pick by the Giants. We're jazzed up that this is the missing piece. All jokes aside, though, Josh, let's wrap the show here by talking about how we could kind of see this wide receiver group lining up. In 2022, Mike McDaniel's first year as head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he had Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Trent Sherfield, Cedric Wilson, Eric Ezukama, and then River Craycraft actually started the season on the practice squad. Miami only had 5 receivers. Last year, 2023, Hill, Waddle, Braxton Berrios, Craycraft earning a spot on the 53, Ced Wilson, and then Eazy-E with Robbie Chosen on the practice squad. So there's that 5 to 6 players who are going to be in the rotation early. Then that one obvious practice squad guy that the first second there's an injury issue, he's going to come up. So Josh, before I get your list of players, how many wide receivers do you think the Dolphins are gonna keep?
You made it sound like it's almost 6, right? 6 seems like that sweet spot. I mean,
I
damn,
agree. Yeah.
I'm looking at this list though, man. I don't, I don't know how I'm sitting here weeding this thing out. So I'm, yeah, man. I'm looking at this group. There's going to be some battles, and I think it's going to be fun to watch. Is Eric Ezukama going to step up? I mean, we all want him to, but is he an odd man out? I mean, those are the questions that we're going to answer or try to answer today, right? And then hopefully look back on a few months down the road and with reassurance, or see which one of these guys steps up and proves us wrong.
Let's be bold, Josh. Let's get 3 guys out of the way. We'll guarantee our listeners right now that Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Odell Beckham Jr. are on the Miami Dolphins week 1. So we'll just dash out 3 spots right there. Braxton Berrios, he's back in Miami on a 1-year deal. I think his consistency on special teams, and he is good for 1 reception that is just oh so important every week. You could debate that maybe he needs to have more than 1 reception every week, but for those special teams, I think he is going to be on that opening day roster. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, you're not trading him, right? I don't think anybody's gonna call up and ask you for Braxton
Maybe
Berrios
7.
unless he
Dan Feeney deal.
Yeah, Dan Feeney deal. Yeah, I mean, they could have used Dan Feeney if we're being honest, right? Throughout the year with all
That's
those
a good
interchangeable pieces. But I'm not getting excited. Yeah, I think you're good with Braxton Berrios. I think he's gonna stick around, and then we're up to what? That's 4 now that we have. Damn.
Eric Ezukama, I'm a huge fan until I look back last year, and I was like ranting, raving about how big of a deal he was in the offense early in the year. Blew my mind he only had 1 reception. I don't know if I was misremembering.
That was both of us. It was all preseason. We didn't realize it was all exhibition games that hit like every awesome stat or every big play we've ever seen was just a YouTube highlight or Instagram.
So let me ask you that, Josh. He was on the opening day roster each of his first 2 seasons. His best highlights are YouTube highlights, preseason highlights. As a former 4th-round pick, is that enough for him to earn a spot on the opening day roster?
I mean, you'd probably think normally, but I mean, for me, I don't know what the severity of that injury is that he had. And then, as we're going to talk about, there's some guys that the Dolphins drafted later this year that I think that at this point, if Ezukama's not going to step up and win this job, clear cut, prove to be that clear cut favorite, I might want to give one of those guys, a chance over a 4th rounder. So I think on most rosters, yes, he's probably sticking, but with how talented this group is, and you think about some of these relationships that like a Craycraft has, I mean, I try not to look at that too much, but I don't know, man. You might keep a Craycraft around because he's your guy that you've been with. He goes out there and does the gritty stuff. And let's be honest, we can't really rely on Eric Ezukama despite how awesome he's looked in the preseason.
Clear cut is such a great identifier. Like if he comes in and has a awesome preseason, he's raved about all through the mini camps, there's no doubt he's making the roster. But if we're hearing that he's catching passes from Mike White all training camp, and it doesn't really we don't hear any rumbles or anything like that, then I think you can open it for debate, because I think Berrios is a great example, right? You need guys out there you can trust. You can have him step in. I think he had a touchdown week 1 last year. He can come in, great blocker. So that's one debate. So Joshua Houtz, how many rookie wide receivers would you have on this opening day roster?
All right. I mean, I'm torn. I really like Taj Washington, and I really want to throw him out there, but I think he's that guy you're going to probably hopefully maybe possibly stash on the practice squad. So I'm going to go with one. I'm going to think Malik Washington. I think he's going to be that receiver that makes the roster, but I don't know, man. I think either of those guys could win, and I'm just sitting here thinking, are we going to get rid of an Eric Ezukama? I mean, what do you say? What do you say? Which one of these? How many rookie receivers you got? I mean, it's early. We haven't even seen these guys do anything outside of the few games we watch and the cut ups we've seen and things like that. But It's so fun to be able to talk about this.
I can tell your years of being burned on these guys is really taking its toll because you have already jumped off the bridge.
I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't want to do it again. I don't want to jump on the wagon so fast without.
You don't want to leap off on May 5th for a 7th round pick in an offense that has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Odell Beckham. How dare you? How dare you be so sane?
I do really like Taj Washington though. I keep going back to him, like just put your flag on him. But Malik Washington looks so good too. So yeah, I love both of them, but I can't sit here and plant my flag on them because, like you said, man, Preston Williams is now. I think he signed with the Alouettes up there in CFL. I mean, that's Houtz's evaluation of some of these guys. What's Isaiah Ford doing? He's probably coming back to the Dolphins one last.
He's probably a practice squad quarterback somewhere or something like that. I had Malik Washington and Eazy-E making it to round out my 6. I like how all 3 of Miami's final draft picks are great in special teams players. Taj Washington, Malik Washington specifically could be those guys. Is that Frankenstein?
I don't know. My wife said she's a zombie, and I did not know that's what she meant. I thought she was like just looking at her iPad or staring at TV or something.
That's a much cooler zombie. If you're listening to this on the podcast, if you're listening to the 560 WQAM, you just saw a zombie. So I cannot jump off the ledge for a 7th round pick, Josh, but I also do know last year the Dolphins Twitter was pretty upset when Ryan Hayes, a 7th round offensive lineman, was cut. And that's going to be my biggest question. Are the Dolphins going to really hope that someone like Malik Washington makes it on the practice squad, or someone like Taj Washington, I should say, is there on the practice squad? Or are they going to try to maybe do something different? They pocket the young, fresh, exciting guys, and maybe you try to, if Easy doesn't have a great preseason, maybe you try to sneak him onto the practice squad and see if things can get figured out that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if the Dolphins are going to sit there and get ballsy enough to try to stash both these guys. I mean, you saw how many teams passed on them, but realistically, how long would these guys continue to fall? Who had these guys on speed dial? Hey, if you get drafted, we're going to call you up, Taj Washington. So these could be the first guys that people poach, whether it's to just get intel on what Mike McDaniel's building or to bring in that type of player. So I would rather not see them try to stash both of them. But again, you don't know who's going to step up. And I do think that's one of the good things about this Mike McDaniel, just what they do is they do really allow these guys to kind of battle it out and let the best players play, right? So we'll see who sticks around. We'll see who we're sitting here talking about as we get closer. But that's a hell of a wide receiver core when we think back to what Tua was throwing to. You might have mentioned it, but we had like all the guys I was going to name, Lynn Bowden, one of my guys, Isaiah Ford, one of my guys. Yeah, Albert Wilson. Yeah, you're naming all these guys who I hyped up and have all these highlights of if you search my name. But crazy the transformation we've come to.
Good time to be a fan of the Dolphins. You can't lose games in the offseason. So this is an absolutely fun signing for the Dolphins. I get there's some doubt, but hey, this isn't someone the Dolphins spent $40 million on over 3 years or anything like this. This isn't someone who's going to come in and be a locker room issue. We've seen him really become a leader. I'll even go that far. I'll drop the L word. He was a leader for the Baltimore Ravens. He was one of the guys that the front office brought in to tell Lamar Jackson, we are trying, we are legit. And Lamar responded to that. He ended up signing the contract, right? So hope everyone out there has a wonderful week. Thank you so much for listening to another Dolphins podcast. We will be back later this week with another episode, but thank you all so much for listening. We will talk to you soon. Until then, fins up.
Fins up.
Fins up.